Hi, Sarah.
Lisa, can you all see me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just not on my own screen. So I was like, am I there or not? Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, everybody.
All
Hello.
Hello.
So I have 3:30. Are we almost ready to go, do you think? We are still missing Amy. I believe Amy is coming. Amy did let me know that she's expecting a call from a doctor's office. And so that if she was already in the meeting, she would then probably have to jump off for a minute and come back. Or maybe that's what happened right now and they've already called her. So maybe she'll be joining us in a little while. But it looks like we at least already have a quorum. So we could get started if that's okay. You guys give me a thumbs up if you think we should start. And if you don't, then that's cool too. But we've got business we've got to get done. I'm Mary McIntyre. If you aren't sure who I am, I missed last month's meeting. I was out of the country. And so I apologize for not being here, but I was off having a blast in Ireland. We are going to begin with the approval of the minutes. And I saw that we had some minutes. Were they March only or April?
We didn't meet in April. We canceled.
Last month you canceled completely. Okay.
Correct.
So we do need to approve the March minutes then. So if hopefully everyone had an opportunity to review those minutes. And does anyone have any comments or concerns, suggestions for changes about those? No. Okay, then we would need a motion to approve and a second.
I can make a motion to approve.
Was that Emily?
Sarah Harris.
Okay, thank you. I can't
Earl
see you.
second, sorry.
And
If
I
you
will
want to get it, I can second. Okay.
Here's Amy. Welcome, Amy. We were just getting ready to approve the minutes from the March meeting. Okay, so we've had a motion to approve the minutes. There were no suggestions for changes or issues with them. So all those in favor of approving the March meeting minutes, give another thumbs up.
Who seconded? I'm sorry, I can't see y'all.
Sarah Harris seconded.
I thought she made the motion.
Oh, then Emily Dodson.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. So then we can move over to business from the director. Taki, were there any informational items that you wanted to highlight or discuss with us?
Yes, there are a couple of things. I have a printer going on in the background. I'm sorry, I can't seem to stop that thing. Couple of things. One is, of course, April was Child Abuse Prevention Month, and today's presentation will be what we had hoped we'd present in April in recognition of that. And I wanted to share with you all that the Office of Housing has identified 3 families off the waiting list who will be offered vouchers, which is exciting. So, you may recall.
I'm having trouble hearing. Is anyone else also having a hard time? Taki, I could just barely hear you. Is there maybe a microphone being blocked or something?
How's this? Did that get better?
Yeah.
Okay, I
Yep.
turned something up, but it's this is not my area of expertise. So,
Just yell at us.
so 30 families are being pulled off the Office of Housing waiting list to get vouchers. And so you may recall we cleaned the waiting list, we opened it up, we sorted, we did we had so many folks, we had to do the lottery, and now we are finally moving to actually housing some of the folks on that list, which is an exciting sort of outcome for the Office of Housing. Just will continue to share with you all that we continue to experience a very high turnover rate. Right now, about 27% of staff over the last 12 months have left. A disproportionate number of those staff have been people of color, and that's of grave concern to us. We continue to pay very close attention to that and do exit interviews to make sure we understand how and why that's happening. In addition to that, we're experiencing very low pools. So when we do post a position, we've had several positions that have 0 applicants. So we posted positions, good positions that under other sort of pre-pandemic circumstances would have 100 or so applications. We have had 0. So I just note that as a context for trying to be prospective or grow or do better, do more. It's very hard when we can't actually do our baseline. So that's all. Happy to answer questions. And of course, we have experts smarter than me, like Mary Stebbins with us, who can answer questions about the informational items if I can't do it.
That's great. Amy, you want to go?
Actually not informational items, but I was just wondering, Kathy, within those exit interviews, do you see any patterns? Is there anything kind of, top reason or,
I certainly see some patterns. I don't know that I can identify one reason. I will share with you that the stress of the pandemic, both the stress of the job during the pandemic and the baseline stress of just any one of us existing and surviving the pandemic has led people to say there's stuff about our workplace that they don't want to put up with anymore, that they might under normal circumstances have been willing to. And also people who have said, I see myself doing a different thing in a different place. To the extent that I'm asking questions, particularly around whether people feel like they've had psychological safety in this place, that's the place where I'm looking for a pattern and trying to understand it. And certainly there are people who have said they felt great here, barring the stress, and other people who said they didn't feel great here. So we really need to find a way to unpack that.
I spoke with Diantha McKeel on the Board of Supervisors, and this is one of the things that we discussed, which I know that the Board of Supervisors is aware that this is a county-wide issue. I think they've had huge turnover in the county overall, and they're trying to do a market study to see, is how competitive is our pay, our benefits, the way the jobs are structured. And she said her hope was that that would come out in the fall and would provide some guidance. So hopefully that will help, because, the Great Resignation is across the board in the United States in so many fields, and that's part of it. But I'm really glad you're doing those interviews and trying to figure out what's going on in your department particularly.
All right, how about now? A little bit? Okay. Natalie, thank you for that. I do think that the compensation and class study will significantly impact the Department of Social Services in that context, and I'm hopeful that we'll see some changes and some acknowledgement around that. I will say we've had somebody leave recently who was able to take a job doing very similar work with actually some less responsibility for $22,000 more than we offer that person. So the gap is pretty broad. And I cannot imagine that the county, no matter how intentional and generous, is going to be able to make up that much different distance in such a short period of time. And so I just want to manage our own internal expectations around that it will be incremental changes that hopefully build us to being, and I really appreciate that the county has identified that one of its goals is to be an employer of choice. So that I think that spirit should motivate those changes.
Natalie, did you have any other questions about any informational items? It's okay if you don't. I just didn't want you to, I didn't want to move on. Or Emily or Sarah, do either of you have anything you wanted to bring up?
You're asking about the May informational items, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
yes, I had a question. On 8B, it talks about the Medicaid or the public health emergency being extended, yes. And that means that Medicaid applications would not be reduced or terminated. Is that just until July 15th, or is that just?
They've extended it multiple times, and I think that, so we have to assume that they mean it when they say it's gonna end in July, but we also know that we've come close to deadlines before, and they've extended it some more, in large part because they're aware that the workload for eligibility is going to spike dramatically, and that their current caseloads, current workforce cannot manage that across the state, across the country. So they're trying to figure out mitigating circumstances or to improve the way all systems will do this unwinding. And I don't think they're any closer to knowing what that might be. So I think they keep extending it until they find some additional solutions. Mary, do you have any other information that might be?
No, I was just going to add that they have assured us that we will have 60 days notice before the public health emergency ends. And then once the public health emergency ends, it will be a year-long, probably 14-month long unwinding process in which all applications will have to be re-upped, right? So reviewed to see if they will be then renewed or declined at that point. So it's going to be a really long process, and it's going to be an extreme amount of work on our benefits workers during that year or so time frame. But that's what I know at this point.
Thank you.
Actually, how many clients does that entail, Mary? Do you know?
Not off the top of my head. I've heard many number. I can't remember. And so I would probably quote wrong if I tried. But I can get that to you if you're interested. Yeah,
I am curious if it's hundreds or thousands.
thousands.
Thousands, that's what I was afraid of. Okay.
I had a couple questions about the Bright Stars. First, I should know this, but does ACPS hire Bright Stars instructors, or is that?
They hire the teachers and the TAs, yes. And then
Okay.
we are responsible for hiring the family coordinators, who are basically the social workers that work with the families.
Gotcha. And how's staffing looking for that for next year for both of those sides?
I don't know about the teacher side. Bright Stars family coordinators, we're all hired. We're fully staffed. I'm not sure on the teacher side. Alice, have you heard from Carol how that's going?
I have not.
And then one more thing about the Bright Stars, and this is a little nitpicky, but I keep reading about these at-home learning kits, which I think are fantastic if the families are getting ongoing continued like engagement with the kits. Are the teachers sending home like newsletters or activities to go along with the kits and kind of keeping that engagement process up? And
I would say, at least historically, yes, very much so. I used to work in Bright Stars, and it was very, there was a lot of engagement in terms of just that. There were newsletters, there were activities to do, all of those things. I would, I'm several years out now, but I would, even when I was supervising the program, which was only, well, supervising the supervisor of the program, which was only a few years ago, they were still doing that. So my presumption would be, yes, they're very much engaged with those.
And then the final question on that is, I just want to make sure that the whole Bright Stars team is aware of Families Helping Families and Mom to Mom. It looked like Bright Stars was helping with some, just some family support, diapers, formula, cribs. And I want to make sure that Families Helping Families and Mom to Mom are on your list of resources.
Yeah, they absolutely are.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I had a couple notes that I wanted to ask about. One of them was in number 2C about the new transportation assistance program. It says that it's used to provide driving and transportation assistance to youth. Is this primarily as in like paying for Ubers, or is this paying for them to take the driver's education course? Or is this to help them purchase a vehicle? Like, what would you think the majority of the funds actually go toward?
That's the new foster care funds. Alice, do you know about those?
I would say all of the above. It would depend on the need of the youth. It does give some flexibility for them. So all of those things are possibilities.
And I also realize, I guess, because it's a new program, maybe it all hasn't kind of been hammered out yet, all of those details, and we would know once it's been going for a while where more of that money would go. So I just wanted to ask, and I did kind of daydream like, oh, well, if someone in the community had a vehicle that they wanted to donate, would we be facilitating that sort of thing through a program like that? Or is that something we would try to stay out of?
I mean, I think I'll let my colleagues respond too, but I would, my first instinct is to say no. Having facilitated the transfer of 2 vehicles from private citizens to community members in need in my last job, the work required for staff and the expectations of staff were just so much greater and so far outside their expertise that it was really very difficult, despite our strong desire to make the match connection work. I will say that Love Inc. in the end was willing to be that intermediary for both the donors for the cars and for our clients. And so we're able to use Love Inc.'s expertise around that to facilitate it. So my instinct would be to say no, but I'm always persuadable. So, yeah.
I mean, I don't think there are a ton of people out there saying, please take this vehicle, especially like one that works or has all 4 of its wheels. But you never know. So and I'll just keep that in mind. Another note that I made was in number 4, Family Preservation Unit news, just section A, reading that whole entire story and all of the details about the family group of 5. And all of the different steps that everybody went through to make sure that they were taken care of. And then I got to the end and it was kind of like you guys buried the lead, because just right towards the end, it says all of this was done within a week of the children initially being safety planned out of the home. I mean, whoa, that is just really, really impressive. And what an amazing effort with such a daunting task. So maybe that's normal for it to be like start to finish, not that it's finished, but to get to that point within 1 week. I just felt like, I mean, I can't even get a new driver's license in a week. Like it's a very complicated process. So I just hope that you know how impressive that is and how appreciative that we are of that kind of effort. Because yeah, that's something that you guys should be really proud of. Not really a question. I have one more. Number 6 in the Office of Housing News in A, it mentioned that the Piedmont Community Land Trust is going to get $625,000 to support the construction of 12 permanently affordable homeownership opportunities. Is that the development that's going to happen on 29, like where the Red Roof in project is, or sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's so the project you're talking about is Premier Circle, and that's a collaboration of Virginia Supportive Housing, Piedmont Housing Alliance, and this is Piedmont Community Land Trust, which has actually been around in this community for a long time. And what they do is purchase the land upon which an affordable housing house will be built, and then they essentially lease the land for 90 years to the homeowner, or up to 90 years for the homeowner. And there's essentially a deed of trust attached to that lease that requires that when they sell that home, the home gets sold at an affordable rate. So they benefit from home ownership and some equity building, and they obviously benefit from a safe and affordable place to live. But the home is in perpetuity identified as an affordable housing location. So it's a very special kind of tool, and I'm sure that I've butchered it. If Stacy Pethia were here, she'd give you 14 white papers on the legal basis for a land trust. But it has the potential of, it's one additional tool that essentially protects the land from being developed further for pure profit.
Got it. Okay, thank you. It seems like that's all we have, unless anyone else has generated any questions during the discussion. So I think that we can move forward with the new business from the director. If you want to make some introductions, I see a lot of people who I don't know. So I feel bad that I forgot to do introductions at the beginning. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm at work and I'm distracted and I'm doing my best.
Well, we have a new board member with us, Willie Mae. And so I wonder if Willie Mae would like to introduce herself, and then we can all introduce ourselves to Willie Mae and possibly to each other as well.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Willie Mae Gray, and I am a community health worker for the Blue Ridge Health District. I came to work with the health department back in January of 2020. So we opened a satellite office out here in the southern part of the county, out in Edgemont at what used to be the old elementary school, B.F. Yancey. So our clinic is out here, and I'm primarily out here. I'm the community health worker for Albemarle County lead. So I also go throughout the county of Albemarle as well, and into other localities as well. So I thank you for having me, and I look forward to working with everyone and just trying to take it all in and all of the information that's coming in. You're working on a lot, and a lot of good things are happening. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for your willingness, Willie Mae. So shall I just pick someone to go next, and then they'll pick somebody to go next, and then we'll get through it in the next hour or so? Okay, I'm gonna do it that way. I'm Kathy Dimick, and I'm the director. You guys know who I am. Sarah.
I'm Sarah Harris. I'm a representative from the Whitehall District, and this is my second meeting. Happy to be here. Mary?
Which Mary?
Sorry. I don't even know.
I can go if you want me to be.
Yeah, you go ahead and go.
Yeah, I'm Mary McIntyre. I'm the representative from the Rio District, and I just became the chair recently, so I'm still figuring out what that means. I'm a teacher at Jack DeWitt Middle School, and that is where I am right at this moment. Next will be the other Mary.
I'm Mary Stebbins. I'm the deputy director here for Rural Social Services. Emily?
I'm Emily Dotson. I'm on the Scottsville seat. For now, unfortunately, I'll be relocating. So if anyone knows anyone in the Scottsville area who's interested, let me or Donna know. But yeah, it's been great. It's been a pleasure working with all of you. I need to pick Natalie.
I'm Natalie Dietert. I represent the Jack Jewett District. I'm an instructor at TJACE at PVCC. And this is, I think, is my third meeting. So I'm also new, Willie Mae. So welcome. Yeah. How about Amy?
Hi, guys. I am Amy Lawfer. I am Ravenna District, and I think this is my third year on the board. So thank you. Oh, do I pick someone? Sorry. The other Amy.
Good afternoon. I'm Amy McManaway, a senior with the Child Protective Services unit. And Alice.
I'm Alice Micklem, and I'm the Assistant Director with responsibilities over child welfare and our self-sufficiency team. Kelly?
Hey everyone, I'm Kelly Rogers. I'm one of the two CPS supervisors with CPS Investigations. Nice to meet you all. Tammy.
And I'm Tammy Yarbrough. I am the other CPS supervisor with Kelly. Jay?
Hi there, I'm Jay Chowdhury. I'm a senior family preservation worker at Albemarle County Social Services. And Farron.
Hi everyone, I'm Farron Lamb. I'm a senior child protective services worker under Kelly Rogers and Lisa Jordan.
I'm Lisa Jordan. I'm the one that sends you all the annoying emails with invites and all kinds of good stuff.
You mean all the helpful emails?
Okay.
You think that leaves Alice? Is that right?
Alice already went.
Did Alice go? Oh, sorry, Alice.
Mary, would you like us to move into the presentation? Excellent. All right, take it away.
Thank you, and thank you for having us. I am going to share my screen, and please be patient with me. This looks a little different than, do I have to do anything for share sound first?
I don't think so in Zoom, Tammy. I think as long as,
Yeah, there's a share sound button in Zoom.
oh, is there? Okay.
I found it. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, because I can't see any of you when I have the screen up. So initially, as you're aware, we were going to present last month during Child Abuse Prevention Month. So you'll see a little bit of information related to some of the activities that we did. But we're going to start off with talking about Virginia Children's Service Practice Model. Amy?
So the core values within that model are all families have strengths. Families are the experts on themselves. Families deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Families can make well-informed decisions about keeping their children safe when they are supported. Outcomes improve when families are involved in decision-making. A team is often more capable of creative and high-quality decision-making than an individual.
And these core values really guide our efforts and our decisions and engagements with families. Amy?
So what we do, before we get to the first bullet point, I just wanted to say that a lot of times, let me address that at the end, I'm sorry. So we assess through family assessments, and we investigate reports of abuse and neglect. We constantly walk the tightrope of less than optimal parenting versus abusive and neglectful parenting. We constantly weigh child safety with parents' Fourth Amendment rights to parent as they see fit. We try our best to engage families while ensuring child safety by addressing personal and sensitive subject matter. And we provide consultations, information, and referrals to the community, as well as our mandated reporters. A lot of times people are not aware of what the services are out there or who they need to contact in order to get something done. And so we try to educate them and also make the appropriate referrals for services.
Amy? Oh, I'm sorry. Erin?
All right. When a Child Protective Services report is made, the CPS worker must determine if the situation described meets the legal definition of child abuse and neglect, and if we have the legal authority and responsibility to respond. So that's typically done at the point of intake, where mandated reporters and people in the community call to make a report. If the report meets that criteria, then Child Protective Services will either conduct a family assessment or an investigation. The differences in a family assessment is it's a global assessment of the safety and risk to children and the family. It differs from the investigation in the sense that there is no finding, and a finding is what is reflected on those central registry searches that are conducted when you apply for employment and things like that. So there is no finding, which allows for a greater family engagement when doing the family assessment. And oftentimes at the end of the family assessment, we will refer and connect families with needed supports and services, which may include making transfers to other units within our child welfare programs. With an investigation, you are looking at more of specific incidents and gathering evidence while also looking at the same things you do in a family assessment. So safety and risk to a child while collecting evidence to make a finding, whether or not abuse and neglect occurred, and placement of the abuser's name into that central registry if a finding is made. In either type of case, the CPS worker, we conduct safety assessments, risk assessments, and with those safety assessments, we're also determining if abuse and neglect occurred and how we can keep children safe. And then risk assessment determines service needs. And in some cases, in our investigations and even family assessments at times, we're often conducting those jointly with law enforcement, where they're investigating the criminal aspect of things and we're partnering them to complete our investigation.
Thank you. There's several types of abuse and neglect that CPS investigates. It could be physical abuse, physical neglect, and physical neglect encompasses a large variety of types of neglect, such as improper supervision, inadequate housing. It could be that there's medical neglect, substance abuse that's impacting the children. It could be sexual abuse, mental abuse. If a child is born exposed to certain substances and the child is impacted, and human trafficking. And human trafficking was recently added to the types of neglect that CPS investigates about 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago now. And ACDSS has since November had 2 human trafficking assessments for Albemarle County. Amy?
So there are some reports that are outside the scope of child abuse and neglect in Virginia. One of those is educational neglect that is addressed by the school system. Lack of immunizations and preventative health care. So we do have a medical neglect category, but that does not include preventative care or immunizations, as those are parental choices. Failure to use the seatbelt restraints in vehicles, that is a legal issue, and the police department will deal with those, and then the court can hand out penalties or fines. Non-caretaker sexual abuse would include child-on-child sexual abuse, and also adult to child if there's no caretaker relationship. Those are handled by law enforcement. Abuse did not occur in Virginia and the abuser does not live in Virginia. So in that case, the abuse needs to be reported to the state in which the abuse took place. And then poverty. So poverty alone is not enough for us to open a family assessment or investigation.
Erin?
All right, so in our Child Protective Services response, after that screening decision has been made and it's either been assigned as a family assessment or an investigation, our goal is to strengthen and support families in preventing the occurrence or reoccurrence of child abuse or neglect through community-based services while keeping children safe. So we will interview the victim child, their siblings, their parents, even if the parent doesn't reside in the home. The alleged abuser is typically what we call them. So who has committed this act of child abuse and neglect, and others who have knowledge of the family and their situation. So whether that be friends, neighbors, grandparents, teachers, counselors, whoever has really close connections with these children. We'll observe the child's home and the site where the abuse occurred. So where the child primarily resides, and say they were visiting at an aunt's house where the abuse occurred, we will go see aunt's home. We review pertinent records. So those will include medical records, educational records. We can request police reports and review those as well associated with an address. We assess future risk of abuse and neglect by using a structured decision-making tool, looking at a caregiver's history of various factors. We do service planning with families and have family partnership meetings, which are very extensive to coordinate. So thankfully here at Albemarle, we have a family partnership meeting coordinator, which is very helpful because those meetings can sometimes have as many family members as they want to invite. We partner with community resources. So we often learn and partner and engage in trainings and just various things in the community to figure out how we can best support our family. And another great thing here at Albemarle is we activate a family finding team as needed. So if we've identified a child needs to be placed out of the home, we thankfully have a team that gets together and will explore different searches that aren't at the disposal of a lot of other agencies, and contact just family members and phone numbers that we see and ask, are you related to this child? Do you have an interest? And it really helps identify maybe if a father hasn't been involved since birth, maybe the father's aunt will come forward and say, I really want to be a part of this child's life, whether that be providing like stable housing and safe housing, or just being a support and being in their life.
Thanks, Farron. I think one of the important things to point out as well is that CPS is under state and federal mandates for a family assessment that must be completed within 60 days. And for an investigation, it's 45 to 60 days. And if law enforcement isn't available in a joint investigation, it could be up to 90 days. So a lot of work in a short period of time. At the conclusion of the CPS assessment or investigation, there's a couple different scenarios that could play out. One of them is that the case is closed, it was unfounded, and that there's no further services from DSS or referrals to make to community-based services. That might include family support and Bright Stars workers placed in the schools. We could find that the family is in need of additional protective services and transfer it to CPS in-home services or family preservation services. Sometimes that includes court intervention and sometimes it does not. If the children are actually unsafe, that may involve court intervention, out of home placement, either to relatives, fictive kin, or foster care.
All right. Yes, so the danger, fear, and secondary trauma as a child welfare worker or a CPS worker, we have a bunch of images here of some of the things that we may encounter when we are making these responses to families' home and trying to do all these positive things that maybe families don't always see as the most positive in a time of crises. So we're often working with families at some of their lowest points, and whether that be substance abuse or domestic violence, mental health conditions, thoughts of suicide, very volatile at times situations. And, you know, this is their children. So you can imagine how difficult it is for, you know, Child Protective Services to become involved. So as a worker, we have to be mindful of things like substances and residue and fentanyl exposure even you know, if there's fentanyl in a home and you sit down, it can be absorbed through your skin. There's methamphetamine labs, which are very real, very dangerous and unpredictable behavior when someone's on substances. There's weapons, there's not just firearms, but if someone is in a mental health crisis and they're angry at some of the things that you're saying, or they're not in agreement or able to partner with you, there's just always that concern of them becoming aggressive. We work with families that may have some fears and children that have fears of having the cartel or gangs retaliate against them. Very real fears. There are, of course, animals. I love animals, but you just never know if you're going to encounter a pit bull that might not know you and you're trying to be friendly, but they see you as a stranger. So those are very dangerous things. And, you know, anytime you make a response, whether it's domestic violence or just mental health conditions, when you're delivering such vulnerable and sensitive news to families and trying to partner with them and get them to address things that they may not be willing to address yet, there's always the fear of like suicide and fatalities and even, you know, homicide, all of those things, very real things that we're dealing with often in Child Protective Services.
And potentially the secondary trauma to the actual worker themselves having to be exposed to any of these as well. Amy.
So April was Child Abuse Prevention Month, as it is every year. And this year's national campaign theme was Every Day We Help Positive Childhood Experience Take Root. So the hope and purpose: a tree lives by its roots. Change the roots and you change the tree. Change the trees and you change the forest. So pretty much building from the ground up. Pinwheels of Hope, you'll see these every April as we put them out. There's an explanation about what the pinwheel stands for. And then April 5th, we planted Pinwheels of Hope. Hope for childhoods free of abuse and neglect, and hope for communities that support these efforts. Let their symbolism take root, grow, and flourish in you, not just in April, but throughout the year.
And you probably saw these both on our front lawn here at Cobb 5 and Cobb McIntyre, and I believe some artwork and things down on the downtown mall. Baron?
Yeah, so some of the services we talked about making recommendations for families, which are also unique to Albemarle, are the Bright Stars program and the Family Support Program. The Bright Stars program, at times when we have finished or concluded working with a family, depending on their level of need as far as services and support go, and the age of their children, we can make referrals to this program, which is an early intervention and prevention program designed to reduce disparities for young children upon formal school entry and to reduce or eliminate those risk factors that led to early academic failure. There's Family Support Program, which provides prevention and intervention services that support children's growth and development, strengthens families, promotes school success through home and school and community collaboration. These programs are such a huge support to Child Protective Services. Oftentimes when we get new referrals, we can get so much information from these programs that are often in the homes working with these families already and can give us kind of a back history, things that these families have had challenges with in the past, their strengths. So even if we don't make those recommendations, sometimes they're already in place and are huge informative programs for us to utilize and partner with.
Thanks. Jay, you talk about family preservation.
Yes. So Family Preservation Services is another one of our units. And why does Family Preservation Services exist? And it's really to prevent child abuse and neglect and to preserve families through engaging practices that build capacity for families to provide safe, stable, and nurturing environments for their kids. Family Preservation serves Albemarle County residents from various backgrounds, cultures, religions, languages, and family structures whose children are at risk of child abuse, neglect, or the foster care system. Most of the families are referred after CPS involvement has identified high risk of future abuse or neglect or the risk of foster care. We also serve when the court has determined that the children are at risk of entering foster care and the situation does not meet criteria for a CPS response to child abuse or neglect. So what do we do? The plans that we develop with families are designed to increase child safety, reduce risk, and build on families' strengths to meet their needs. We do this by assisting the families in accessing resources to meet material needs, whether that's rent, food vouchers, things like that, helping children and families identify natural supports like extended family, providing services and conducting assessments from a strength-based, trauma-informed, and family-centered perspective, connecting children and families with therapeutic services to promote healing, which is really a majority of what our work centers around, and then collaborating with community partners such as Albemarle County Public Schools, the Court Services Unit, Region 10, and local therapeutic providers and nonprofit organizations.
Thank you. And along the theme of preventing child abuse and neglect, this infographic depicts something from the CDC that talks about a lot of the things that we here in Albemarle County are already trying to do. Clearly, poverty, there's a significant correlation between poverty and child abuse and neglect, the inability to be able to access resources that could contribute to a family's housing, to their ability to be able to get medical care, medical treatment, food, and a safe place to stay. So you can see from some of these things that changing social norms and supporting parents, positive parenting, quality care and early education in life, and enhancing parenting skills. These are things that we already do through Bright Stars, family support, family preservation. It's really overall, each one of the units within child welfare does our best to work on these things. And of course, in intervening to lessen harms and prevent future risk, we try to do that by intervening whether it's through CPS or through the Bright Stars family support, family preservation teams to prevent foster care, prevent future neglect, and to connect the family to resources. They say that it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to save a child. So we're all working together in this to do our best to create a safe community for our children and families. Amy?
Might have to unmute. When abuse and neglect are suspected, there are a couple of different reporting methods. The public can call their local department. So for us, Albemarle County, at the main number, and they will direct them to the intake worker on for that day. Around the clock, they can call the CPS hotline at 1-800-552-7096. So that is 24 hours a day, every day of the year. And then we also have the new online mandated reporter portal. And so our mandated reporters can register through that portal and fill the information out on their computer. That goes to the state hotline, and then the state hotline decides which local DSS would have jurisdiction and sends it to us through our inbox.
And as Amy said, it is 24-hour reporting. And so therefore we also have to have 24-hour responding. And so that's where our on-call workers come in, and all child welfare workers are assigned to a week of after hours on call in order to respond to emergencies during non-business hours. And as I said, it takes a village, but the village is made up of individuals. And so this is just a short video that we're going to show that says what maybe you as one caring adult might be able to do to help children in our community. Uh-oh, hang on. Okay, can you all see this?
No.
You cannot see this.
Stop sharing and then you can reshare on the.
Stop share.
And then when you.
Share some.
And then just push, pick the, yeah.
Can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay.
I grew up in a lovely Tudor-style home in an historic, well-to-do neighborhood. I attended the best private girls' school in the city. Graduation included long white dresses, flower girls, and yes, maypoles. I've shared many of these stories with my children. If you ask them about my childhood, they will tell you it was idyllic. In my world, idyllic comes with an ACE score of 7. I don't share that with my children. My childhood taught me a lot. At 7, I learned that pillow forts can transport you to magical places, and that if you'd like to have a peaceful evening, you can replace half the contents of a bottle of vodka with water, and no one will be the wiser. And that with a kitchen chair and a pair of tongs, you can reach everything you need to cook dinner for your little sister. I learned that I am strong. I learned that I am resilient. I learned that my childhood would continue to impact me my entire life, and that abuse has no respect for racial, religious, or socioeconomic boundaries. And that it only takes one caring adult to make all the difference in a child's life.
Okay, so anybody has any questions? We'll be glad to try to answer those for you.
I thought of one. It was when Jay was speaking. So Jay, I'm not sure if you would be the one who would be answering it. Anyone is welcome to. It was about the therapeutic services that are provided for people in the schools. We've been talking about the need for therapeutic services for our students, but we're really struggling to find providers with availability. And so I was wondering if the therapeutic services you're talking about, is this something that is done by a private a private clinic or a private provider in the community and it's subsidized by the department, or is this in-house with someone who's a department employee? How does that work?
Great question. So a couple of different ways. First and foremost, we try to access clients' insurance. So seeing what providers they have available. Typically, we have relationships with a lot of providers in Charlottesville, Albemarle County, so we can steer them the right way. And then if insurance doesn't cover it, we would access CSA funding through our local funding so that we could pay for those services ourselves, which we oftentimes have to do with bigger assessments and stuff like that, psychologicals, parenting evaluations, those kinds of things. And then also for therapeutic mentors or something like that, we would also access funding from CSA as well.
So it's not a situation where they're just put on a waiting list for weeks or months, which is somewhat what some people are seeing.
Unfortunately, we're at the mercy of that as well right now. And what we're finding is since the onset of COVID, mental health needs in our community have exacerbated what we have available. So I think we're all seeing very similar things across the board, which is that providers have lengthy waiting lists. So oftentimes our clients don't get bumped above anybody else, and we're at that same situation of 6 weeks, maybe even 2 months. It really depends on the provider and the service.
Well, I would just add that some of the impact as a result of that is we've certainly had cases where we ended up going to court before services started. And that's not from lack of trying to get the services in, but just not having the availability. And then the other, it's impacted our staff directly because when we don't have providers who are out having regular contact with families and we're worried about child safety, then the responsibilities fall back on the worker, and they find themselves having to be out in the homes more often and providing a level of support that in a lot of ways their schedules aren't built for, but it's nonetheless necessary in the current environment.
Thank you.
Actually, on that vein, Jay, are you guys trying to access any of these online? I feel like a lot of online therapy groups are coming up. I don't know how effective that would be, but is that anything you guys are looking into?
So we don't do necessarily group work. Well, okay, let me start that over. So we essentially allow providers to make their decisions on that to some degree. I encourage families to do as much in person as they can. I think it's more beneficial and effective with therapeutic work that's done, but there are situations where we need to do virtual work due to circumstantial issues. Online groups, unless we know about them, I know we actually offer an online virtual motherhood group that's within our department. I do a fatherhood group that's in person. We'll use any resource if we know about it. It's just a question of finding out about those virtual groups and encouraging our clients to utilize them if they're comfortable with that.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add to that is, when we're working with families, we're looking to them first to identify, what they feel like would be helpful, what they can access. But when a family goes to family preservation services or children enter foster care, a lot of times we need the providers to be part of the treatment team working with the family. And so in investigations, we don't do much of that in terms of service implementation and coordination. But my guess is some of the online agencies may not sort of avail themselves of taking part in a treatment team in the way that would, sort of support the work that we're trying to do to prevent kids from entering foster care. But that's not to say, again, if, mom or dad or somebody has identified an online provider or been seeing an online provider, that we wouldn't make every effort to, to support that as the appropriate plan for them. And I would think, and Jay, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think we would make an effort to engage that provider if they were willing to take part in meetings and things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I did have a couple other questions, but I can hold off. I just wanted to have on that.
I was wondering how the pandemic has impacted your numbers and also impacted for you as staff, the stress that's been placed on you by the additional demands with, not having quite the mental health support and services available in the community, et cetera, and how you as a team have been managing that.
Well, for those that are new to the board, you may not be aware that the CPS team experienced 88% turnover. In essence, all but one of our investigators left between May of last year and November. So that was a huge impact, not just for our team, but for everybody that had to help support providing mandated services to the families that we're working with. So family preservation had a large part in that they're trained to do family assessments. And so they assisted with getting assignments for family assessments. Others helped with covering our intake, because we have to have intake 24/7, or well, during normal business hours. Excuse me. And also the voids that were left with on-call, with 7 staff leaving. It left weeks of on-call after hours. So the stress of doing the work, and of course Kelly and I, because we were at one point down to two staff investigators to work cases. Farron on the screen is was the sole surviving investigator with us. She stuck it out. But Kelly and I were working family assessments and investigations, as well as trying to hire new staff. And so for a period of time, we had lots of folks who were working both their primary role that they were hired to do and taking on CPS tasks, because it was mandated and we had child safety issues. Our numbers throughout COVID have remained fairly steady until recently. I have not done the most recent statistics. We'll be doing that here come June. They stayed fairly consistent, but again, we had less staff to respond. And the seriousness of the cases that we were seeing were much more severe, had more court involvement. And now anecdotally, we can probably say that Amy, as our intake coordinator, is extremely busy, and our staff are having several 24-hour and immediate type responses in a day. So it's keeping folks, we're staying pretty steady and pretty busy. It definitely saw an uptick when school resumed in person versus when it was virtual. And of course, that the stress of that, plus the stress of pandemics, the pandemic and people's personal lives, this is innately a stressful job. And so it certainly did take its toll, and we believe played a part in some of the resignations of staff that left last year.
I would just add to that well before the pandemic, the national average for length of time in child welfare positions is 18 months between your first case and your last case. So it's already a high stress, high turnover field, and that's just been exacerbated. The pandemic's impact across industries, we're certainly included that, but it's on top of already challenging hiring environment. And so Tammy mentioned the CPS turnover. Our foster care just, we've had 4 resignations on our foster care team. One of those positions is filled, other are being advertised. And CPS, while they have filled the original positions that left, we got 3. The county gave us 3 more CPS positions in December 1, and we're still trying to fill the final 2 of those months later. So it's an exceptionally challenging environment in general. And when you can't, it's not the only factor, but when you can't do basic things, like you're not competing from a salary standpoint, it just makes it all the more difficult.
We had 1 applicant in our last pool.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your work and respect that you're. And my last question was around issues of cultural sensitivity, because I work with, I teach ESL to adults. And it has been a particularly stressful year for us at TJAs. We have numerous Afghan refugees coming in with high trauma. I don't think I've had a student this year from Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Congo, who has not told me extreme stories of trauma that they have experienced. And I do often wonder how that translates to their life at home. And I'm sure that must be impacting some of the cases that you're seeing as well.
Kelly or Farron, do you want to speak to that?
I mean, I guess I can just say sort of off the top of my head. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see these families that not only do we become involved because, I don't know, mom's using physical discipline with a cord, and so the child has bruises, and our primary focus is, you can't do that. That crossed a line. How do we help you? And then, in trying to engage in conversation about age-appropriate safe discipline, we're hearing those very same stories. Well, let me tell you about what it took for me and my children to get here, and all of the trauma we've experienced on the way. I think another big challenge that we're seeing is, and I think, anecdotally, I can say this appears to be more the case with a lot of our Latinx families, is communication. And by that, I don't just mean a language barrier, but an education difference. And so we might feel like we're using, we always use interpretation, and we might be able to talk with the interpreter about using the most simple verbiage. But, we've got parents that have 2nd grade educations, and so the ability to engage in some of the more nuanced kinds of conversations that this work ideally involves is just a challenge. And then, and again, I'm sure Jay can echo this, when we do identify that there are service needs, being able to find providers who, bilingual is quite limited with Spanish. I think there's one Arabic mental health professional in the community that I'm aware of. And then finding providers who will work with interpretation, and the time and attention required to be able to provide any sort of therapeutic service to someone who doesn't speak the language has so much, so many needs, just such complex needs. It's a tall order.
Yeah, it's an extremely difficult ongoing case to work for us in the field at this time and at any time, actually. And very much like Kelly said, trying to find supports and different services that will work with translation is incredibly difficult. I just closed a case with a family from Afghanistan. It was open for just about 22 months. And that's the fortunate thing about my case type, is that I can kind of slow the mechanisms down and really take our time to make sure that the family is stabilized and that they can meet the most basic level needs, while also making a positive relationship with the department, so that they'll reach out to us in the future, hopefully, if they start struggling again. And I think that's an important piece, is really fostering that relationship, earning the trust of our different community members who are from different cultural backgrounds, so that they feel safe enough to reach out to us in the future.
I just want to raise an issue, kind of based on the comment about walking that tightrope between what's bad parenting and what's abusive. We know that kids who grow up in a gender affirming household, it's suicide prevention. But parents who are not accepting of gender expansive or gender diversity, or anything other than the binary, they think they're doing right by their kids by denying the gender spectrum. And we also keep seeing that LGBTQ youth are having to be placed outside of the community in foster care at higher rates. And I guess I'm just kind of curious how we protect the kids from parents who think they're doing the right thing when science and all the evidence suggests otherwise, especially when you wrap religion and religious beliefs into it and trying to be from a culturally sensitive standpoint. It's just, I'm sure you've seen it all, and I'm just grateful for those of you working to protect our LGBTQ youth.
Erin, you want to respond to that?
Yeah. So I think that from like an investigative perspective and like a child safety perspective, a lot of it will include to protect them and like to get it over the crossing the line of, that's their right to parent versus is this abuse and neglect, comes from those mental health professionals and getting these kids supported and connected. So those mental health professionals can say when it has crossed a line and when it's impacted their mental health in a negative way. And, sometimes that's challenging if they don't have those supports in place and there's no one to say that mental abuse or neglect has occurred. But when we are working cases like that, where it is allegations of mental abuse and neglect and a parent's actions and inactions are causing distress to a child, we need that nexus from a doctor to say that, from a professional to say that this is what it is, that the parent's actions or inactions are not supporting this child to the point that it's causing a threat of harm or harm to their mental health or physical health. But I completely agree with you. I understand the importance of that. And I think that our whole team does. And it's something that we are always learning and trying to learn new strategies, new trainings to help us grow and keep understanding things. And, we are supporting that population. We're providing education to parents. We are having those discussions and getting the parents' perspectives and trying to provide psychoeducation to help them understand. And I have encountered families that are not supportive, and, it's been something that does impact the child, and we've addressed it absolutely. But, surprisingly in Albemarle County, I haven't ran into too many families. I know that they do exist that are not supportive, which is reassuring. It's been really nice to encounter families that I have personally worked with. I can't speak for everyone on our team, that are supportive of that and do have the necessary supports in our community to address that. And so many resources in those virtual groups that we've talked about to offer that to the family, to give them education, to provide psychoeducation, and to talk with children and see how they genuinely are feeling and making sure that it is not crossing that line of abuse and neglect.
Yeah, and I would just add that, I think we are very fortunate to live in an educated community. And so I think, we have the benefit of school systems that are, I would say, proactive around, gender identity kinds of issues. And so I think, we try to take the same approach, which is you family are an expert on yourself and your child and kind of what you value. However, if it reaches the point where the child is harming themselves, considering suicide, anything like that, something has to give, and that is when we will take protective action if we can't find our way to a meeting of the minds, with the support of other folks who might know the family, have that investment in that child and family. Again, if we aren't successful in bringing the parent around to, if nothing else, staying open and allowing their child to get necessary mental health treatment or support that they need as they work through identity issues. But again, if it comes down to a safety issue and the parent's not taking appropriate action, or as Farron said, is acting in a way that is causing mental harm, then that's when we would get before the court.
I wanted to speak about the staff turnover. I don't know how, but I don't recall hearing the 88% turnover information before. So that's just really concerning. And I mean, in some ways it's not surprising. I wish I could say that I'm surprised, but it's actually just like, yeah, of course, there's a lot going on and it has been really, really stressful, especially dealing with all of the different departments being understaffed and having to pick up extra workload. I've been trying to, within the school division, trying to get them to understand that although of course our students and children are the first priority and they always have to be, you don't have to put staff last to put the kids first. And that if our staff are not in a good place mentally and emotionally and financially, then we have a hard time providing what the children need too. And I mean, that's obviously going to be true for your employees as well. And it doesn't always come down to money. Sometimes I think that employees, if a job gets to be so stressful and so hard, it doesn't matter how much money you throw at them, they wouldn't stay anyway. And so you have to get to the root of what those issues are. So I certainly hope that, and I'm sure it has, I'm sure that work has been done and is ongoing within DSS, and I'm sure that these are conversations that you all have with each other, but I just kind of wanted to show some solidarity there, that a lot of different community organizations are trying to figure out how to take care of our people when we provide a service. We don't provide a product necessarily. It seems so much of our focus and so much of our energy in this culture is product based rather than service based. So I feel you there. The comments about trying to communicate with families and especially immigrant families, I did want to mention that because I'm a reading specialist and this is something that's really close to my heart, and that I see organizations, including the schools, getting wrong a lot is sending out anything, emails, forms to fill out, paperwork, brochures and flyers that have not gone through a readability calculator. There are now so many resources that are pretty low cost where you can copy and paste text into a box, and in 30 seconds it'll tell you what grade level that text is, whether the grammar can be made easier for someone to understand. We know that about 85% of our public can understand grade 8 writing. And so especially if you're working with immigrant communities, you can find suggestions for how to change certain words that will make it easier. And so it's just hard because often when we write, we're writing as if we're talking to someone who has all of the same background knowledge and same academic level that we are, and we're sending things home, and we're like, wait, why didn't anyone respond to our survey? They didn't understand our survey, So I'm sure you guys have all had that conversation too. I do know a few different resources that I could offer if you don't have them. You may already be using them. But I'm certainly willing to have a conversation or get into that with any of you guys. So I appreciate you bringing that up because it shows that you're aware of it and you're already trying to do better.
We would love and welcome the resources. That sounds amazing. It's something that we constantly are having conversations about in our work with families. So that sounds awesome.
I'll be in touch in an email. Does anybody else have questions? Kaki, did you want to wrap it up or do you want us to just move on?
I'm aware that Amy had stopped herself from answering questions earlier and she just answered the one that was so urgent it had to come out. And I want to make sure she gets a chance if she has other stuff.
Yeah, Amy, you had said you had more questions and then you said, but I'll wait or something. Amy Loffer.
Yeah, Natalie asked it, so it's perfect.
Okay.
I'll just thank the staff for doing the incredible work that they do in the devastating context that we live in at the moment, and for sharing that with you all tonight. And because it needs to be said again and again, they are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys, this presentation was really, really informative. And I love that you just bounced around and everyone was speaking and taking turns. It just means that you're really working well together and listening to each other. And so I appreciate that so much. Is it okay if any of us think of questions later on that may pop into our head, we just shoot them to you via email? Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Thank you. We are going to move on to the business of the board and the message out to the supervisors. So I do want to offer to those of you that came to the presentation, you're welcome to leave. You don't need to stay for the rest of the meeting. So thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
me.
all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Do any of our board members have any business you all wanted to discuss with us? Any announcements or anything? I miss Catherine's announcements always about like S-Month activities.
So actually, I will take the time to announce that we'll be rolling out our official walk group out in Esmont. We've partnered with Seville Walks and UVA Cancer Center. So our official walking group will start on June the 4th and we'll run through June through August. The main walks will take place on Saturdays, and during that time before the walk, we have invited presenters that will come out and talk about 3 to 5 minutes on a health topic of their choice. So we are excited about this new walking group. We've already gotten a lot of response as far as people wanting to join it. So just trying to get the word out about that group.
Is it meeting at Yancey?
Yes, we will actually be meeting at Yancey Porter's Road, but we'll start out in the park. So Simpson Park.
Thank you for sharing that so much. Take a note. Anything else, anybody? All right. Well, if you think of it, you could let us know. Does anyone have any main points or ideas that you would love to see included in the message out to the board? I know Kaki's gonna condense it and generate it hopefully for us, but normally we try to say, oh, well, this is something that stuck out to me. I really think that this is important for us to share with our supervisor when we, and for those of you that are relatively new to the board, the way that we typically do this is after the meeting sometime in the next few weeks, there's not a huge rush to do it tomorrow. We will individually reach out to our specific Board of Supervisors member, our supervisor, and we will share what we learned in this meeting, any concerns or questions that we have. We're basically trying to advocate for DSS and for the community. And because we know the supervisors can't attend every single meeting of every single department, and therefore they rely on us to help them communicate the message. And we found that it's a really successful model to do that in person, not to just forward an email to them because they just get buried in emails. And so if you are not on a first name speaking basis with your supervisor, we hope you will become that way soon. Does anybody have any points they want to bring up?
Just to clarify, do we each send our own individual write-up or do we create a write-up as a team?
We give some ideas to Khaki normally now. This is the way we've done it. We could always change. It's just because it's how we have done it doesn't mean we have to do it that way. And then she will take from the presentation we just heard what she believes she wants the supervisors to hear, and she'll send it to all of us in one email. And then once we have that information, you will contact, like I contact Ned Galloway and I say, hey, I want to give you the update. And then we'll either have a phone conversation or we'll walk the halls of Kroger while we're grocery shopping and talk about it. That has happened before.
Well, the one thing that stuck out to me is just the need to protect our staff. That would be my top thing.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think it was Khaki that started off with the 26% turnover, overall. And then if you want to go into this specific, sorry, this room is like 80 degrees. That it was 88% during COVID. Maybe that is something to highlight. And I always think that we need to keep reminding people about that 14 months of evaluation, because I just think that's actually going to be, not right now maybe, but it's coming up. So just to remind folks that that's happening.
It would also probably be worth mentioning that, Emily, did you say you were going to be moving away? There will be a Scottsville position coming open?
Yes, exactly.
And when is it happening?
Immediately. It's been
like tomorrow?
Yeah, well, beginning of June, I will have relocated. So it's kind of an abrupt change. So yeah, I've reached out to my supervisor and I'm, trying to help fill the position too. So if anyone knows of anyone in Scottsville who would be interested, definitely let me or Donna know. Definitely open to suggestions.
And it's good to bring it up to all the supervisors because they do know quite a lot of people across the county, not just in their own district. Maybe they might have an idea or a suggestion. So we could always mention that as well.
I know Yancey has a lot of overlap with members from the Scottsville community. I wonder if Willie Mae might have a good candidate too who would represent the Scottsville district. No pressure, Willie.
Definitely. There's a couple of folks that I can think of, but let me ponder on it.
I think that also, just as a heads up, I'll send it out, but to thank the Board of Supervisors for their strong budget consideration for us during this cycle. We were, I think, the only department, maybe there was one other that had special consideration above and beyond what was in the proposed budget. So they used a special discretionary fund that they have for special initiatives to support a fourth eligibility worker. So a worker that wasn't included in the county executive's budget. They gave us an extra position, and then they agreed to extend a position that was currently 75% to full-time. And then finally, they agreed to start all of those positions in July and not in January, as had been included in the original budget. And so those were significant changes that they identified during our presentation and then held on to during the budget cycle, which is hard. There's lots of competing interests. And so I was really grateful that they did that. And I do think it's important also to thank the board for their steadfast commitment to affordable housing, which is really reflected in this budget in a lot of different places. And with some significant investments, $2.5 to $3 million each, that will make a big difference in our community. So I'll advocate for those things. And then I'll make sure also that the that the board members who attended the pinwheel ceremonies done by our child abuse prevention staff writ large were acknowledged for going. And right now I know Diantha was there, and I'll just make sure that I don't leave somebody out by accident in my thanks between now and when I send the message out.
That sounds great. Well, if we, I would say if we think of anything else, then we can certainly email each other or email Kathy, and let them know. I think we're just about done. Our next meeting is June 14th on Tuesday.
21st.
It's the 21st?
Yeah,
thought it
Mayor,
was
it's
the
the
third.
third. It's the third Tuesday of the month.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Yep, you're right. I was counting the 31st of May as a June day because you guys, it's the end of the year. I'm like
It
lucky
happens.
I'm lucky I'm here and talking. Okay, so the 21st is our next meeting, and we will see you all then.
Okay.
This meeting's adjourned. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.